I am Michaela. I work for Northeastern social media team. I'm also a graduate student in the media advocacy program. For December, I worked with Jody in the Disability Justice Project. And today our panel is on accessible storytelling. And we'll be discussing making video inclusive for all. So today we're joined by Jody Santos. She's a professor here at Northeastern, founder and editor-in-chief of the Disability Justice Project. And we also have Jason Strother, who he is also a professor at Montclair State University, and he is the founder of Lens15 Media. And so we will dive right in.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I know there are many options, different panels to attend this morning, so thank you for choosing ours. I think my colleague Jody and I have a unique perspective on making storytelling video accessible for everyone, so I hope you get something out of this. Okay, so there are millions of Americans who have a disability. 61 million, according to the Centers for Disease Control. Many millions of them are blind and visually impaired, or are hard of hearing, or deaf, or have trouble hearing. But when we think about media accessibility, video accessibility, thinking about going to the movie theater, we think about maybe ramps. You know, I think the picture of someone who has a disability is typically a white man using a wheelchair. So we think about accommodations for that type of condition. Again, ramps, automatically opening door. But perhaps we don't consider the ways in which audio and video can be made more accessible for people who cannot hear well or who cannot see well. And so we're going to discuss a few ways in which video can be made more inclusive and accessible for these people. Okay, so first off, just a little bit about me. I wear many hats. I am the founder of a little production company I call Lens15 Media. It's looking at the news through the lens of disability and accessibility for the 15% of the global population that has a physical, sensory, or developmental condition. I do moonlight as a professor at New Jersey's Montclair State University, where I teach a course at the moment on disability representation in media. I am an alumni. I'm an alum of the Fulbright program. Not unlike Jacques Cousteau, I'm a National Geographic explorer. And I am an advisor to the National Center on Disability and Journalism at Arizona State University, which is the only entity in the United States that advises on best practices for reporting about America's the 25% of the population in the U.S. that has a disability. And I will turn it over to Joe.
Okay, great. Thanks. So again, my name is Jody Santos. I'm an associate teaching professor at Northeastern University, and I am the founding executive director of an organization called the Disability Justice Project. So the mission of the Disability Justice Project is we train disabled human rights defenders from Asia, Africa, and the Pacific in documentary storytelling. And it's a way to really change the narrative in the communities where our fellows live. So we do that. We sort of have a two-pronged mission. One is around narrative change work. So how do you get away from those pity and inspiration narratives? And then it's about media accessibility. So making our media accessible with some of the ways that we're going to talk about today. And also, how do you make the filmmaking process accessible? The filmmaking industry is notoriously inaccessible in so many ways. So we're really, with the limited tools that we have, trying to figure out also how to make the filmmaking process more accessible for blind filmmakers, for deaf filmmakers, filmmakers with disabilities. So, and you'll see a little bit of our work as a representative of that here today.
Yeah. Okay, so I do swear that this is not my Tinder profile picture, but I wanted to show this image because of the importance that an ordinary smartphone plays for people who are blind or who have low vision, such as myself. We think about accessibility for the blind and visually impaired as long white canes, guide dogs, braille, but I will contend that and I don't use any of those devices. I will contend the smartphone is the most important accessibility tool for someone with low or no vision. I consume a lot of media through my smartphone. We think about alt text. I think maybe all of you are familiar now with alt text. I think anyone who's involved in journalism, publishing online, has seen that prompt, or even on social media for that matter, add alt text to your image. And I think for some people it's, oh, okay, this helps our SEO, you know, it embeds text into the image so it shows up on searches better. But really what it does, how it works, is that when that description is built into an image, when I'm using my smartphone and using the text-to-speech function on my phone, it then says, a woman with blonde hair sitting at a table in front of a projection screen, or something to that effect. So that's image description. And again, I think most of us have had some experience with that, whether you're visually impaired or not, just because it is pretty ubiquitous now on most platforms. But what about video? So this is the trailer for a documentary I produced last year about how climate change impacts people with a disability. It's very visual. There are some talking heads in it, but it's text, it's a lot of imagery. So why don't we watch that? It's short.
Climate change is impacting all of us now, everyone. People with disabilities get impacted the most.
When it comes to evacuation and sheltering and providing disaster response mechanisms, often persons with disabilities tend to get left behind.
When we talk about accessibility, it is invisible for people without disabilities.
It is a human rights issue. It is directly impacting my life.
Okay, so very visually oriented. We saw some text, lots of moving images, some sirens, all that. But if I would not be able to, even sitting a few feet away from that screen, I would not be able to read any of the text. Some of the images would be a bit blurry, let's say, and the actual documentary itself features 6 other languages, which are all subtitled, which I cannot read at all. So my own documentary would be completely inaccessible to me, I have some vision, but think about for someone with no vision at all, they would be literally, pardon this pun, I think you see where it's going, they'd be left in the dark. So there is a solution, and it's called audio description. So, same trailer, but audio described.
Words appear. A Lens15 Media production. A coastal city. Text. Coastal South Asia faces stronger storms, floods, and sea level rise as the Indian Ocean warms, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Climate change is impacting all of us now, everyone.
A folded wheelchair rests against a beach shack.
People with disabilities get impacted the most.
Various people crawl, use canes, sit in mobility devices, and are carried by others.
When it comes to evacuation and sheltering and providing disaster response mechanisms, often persons with disabilities tend to get left behind.
When we talk about accessibility, it is invisible for people without disabilities.
A man walks with a long white cane.
It is a human rights issue. It is directly impacting my life.
A wave splashes. A man is carried from a boat. Responders push a man in a wheelchair. A fire truck. A woman is carried by another along the beach. Text. Invisible impact. Disability on climate change's front line. Learn more. Lens15.com/impact.
All right. Well, thank you for the watching my shameless self-promotion for my documentary. So, right, audio description. As you heard, I narrated my own. It is short, descriptive, concise text that describes on-screen imagery in action for those who otherwise can't see the screen. And I also will contend that it's very helpful for people who have full sight but are cooking, driving, exercising. It can be used by people who have no relationship with visual disabilities. It can benefit everybody, but again, primarily for people with these types of conditions. There are few hard and fast rules for creating audio description. Again, concise and descriptive. It's kind of similar to making alt text, but perhaps we're using a bit more action in the sense that we are describing moving images and scenes. It is meant to be fit in between the dialogue. So if you're watching a movie, it would come on, and you have two characters speaking. It comes on in between those bits of dialogue, so it has to be tight. But in journalism, we're all writers, so we do have that experience of making short and concise sentences that get to the point. Again, I think if you ask one visually impaired person what they want to hear out of audio description, you'll get as many opinions as the people you speak with. So yeah, while you can, it's the law that if you go to a movie theater, a visually impaired, anyone, doesn't have to be visually impaired, can request at the ticket box a headset for the audio description. And if the theater staff has been trained well, they will know exactly what to give you. They will give you a little receiver with headphones attached to it, and then when you sit down in the movie theater, you will hear that descriptive track. It is embedded into the projection system in most theaters. And frankly, if a movie theater doesn't have audio description and the distributors for the film produced audio description, one can sue the movie theater for not having it. And that has only come because of various lawsuits filed along the terms of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. Perhaps we've all heard of that. Streaming platforms, Netflix, Disney Plus, you name it. There are ways to toggle on the audio description, and even now audio description in multiple languages are available for some productions. So it is becoming better known, but it is largely invisible as it is for people who do not have a visual disability, because it is hidden away in menu systems or only accessible via a Bluetooth or radio frequency receiver. So it is surprising to me that more people haven't heard about it. Audio description has been around since maybe the early 1980s. I can remember seeing VHS tapes back in the 90s that were audio described films. So it's been around. It is becoming more common. I teach a course on it in New Jersey at Montclair State University. I had 15 students last semester. Maybe with the exception of one of my students, no one had ever even heard of audio description. But after a semester of teaching them, some of those students could get jobs, I feel, writing and producing audio description. So it's not a skill set that is hard to acquire, but still many social media influencers, people posting on YouTube. TikTok is tough because it's so short. It's very rare to find audio described content on social media platforms, and frankly, even on some PBS documentaries, audio description is not available. So there still are many gaps in our media landscape where content is not accessible at all to people who are blind or who have low vision. But again, there is a way to resolve that. So I will now pass the mic over to my dear colleague who will talk about more accessibility features.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing audiences. And I'm going to show an example from, this is a video we did. So I mentioned the Disability Justice Project, and we did an in-person workshop in Samoa in June of 2023. So we trained disabled activists from Fiji, Fiji, Kiribati, Samoa, and the Solomon Islands. And we used iPhones because iPhones are somewhat accessible, especially for blind or low vision filmmakers, because they have image descriptions and they let the subject know, they let the filmmaker know if the subject is in focus. So this video was sort of like a summary of the workshop, but we were also trying to get Apple's attention, like, hey, Apple, we're using your iPhone in this really innovative way, which didn't work, but I love the video. And we really, we worked on all levels of accessibility. So we had one that was definitely audio described, and we make sure that it was somebody from the Pacific Islands. We had descriptive captions, which is I'm going to show you. So not only did we caption it, and that's what you're going to see next, but we also we captioned music. We captioned sounds, right? Because it's not really just about the dialogue for somebody who's deaf or hard of hearing. We did, I'm going to show you also SLI, but sign language interpretation. And we did American Sign Language interpretation and Fijian Sign Language interpretation, because accessibility is also language accessibility. And we work in so many countries that sometimes it's like, okay, well, if I'm really going to be accessible, I'm going to have audio description in 5 languages. I'm going to have captions in 5 languages. I'm going to, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but AI actually someday may get the Disability Justice Project there on all of those fronts. That's going to be a while, but you'll see some examples of that. So this first video that I'm going to share, again, this is from our experience in Samoa, this in-person workshop, and we had descriptive captions. So what you'll see is that the music and the sounds are in parentheses, and then there's the dialogue. And even with something like captions, I mean, you could teach a whole course on how to describe sounds. If I had any of my comm studies audio people in here, but how do you describe music, right? Usually when we see music, it's sort of like what, uplifting synth music or something like that, or melancholy, whatever, piano music. And so in this case, I had the composer describe the music. And so you can kind of see on here, melodic, echoey, electronic, semi-ambient music. And it is funny what Jason's saying, because you'll have some people who are like, that is way too much. Like, I don't need that. And then other people who want so much. So it's really, I think, hard to sort of get it right every time for everybody. But we tried to do that with this video in lots of different ways. So we'll just play the clip.
If you think about it, it doesn't make sense for a blind person to use a camera. But the iPhone has its features where it talks about the right edge, left edge. The voiceover actually says that.
One face near top edge. Centered.
And the good thing about it is that you also have the recording features and the things that are all there on the iPhone, where you just swipe and double tap.
Camera mode, video, near top left edge.
So it's there, although you can't see it, but you have some idea of the parameters of the filming. I think I was introduced to the concept of disability rights in 2011. At first, I felt very overwhelmed because, of course, I've heard of human rights, but I was thinking, okay, isn't this common sense?
All right, so that is that clip with the descriptive captions. In this next one, it's the same. Michaela, maybe you can just play like 30 seconds or a minute of it. So in this next one, this was an experiment that I don't really think worked, at least according. So we have several deaf filmmakers, and they watched it and gave us some feedback. So what we tried to do in this one was we had a sign language interpreter. In this case, Krishner is doing American Sign Language. And in the left box, we had him sign music and sounds, and in the right box we had him sign the dialogue, and we're like, this is great, like it's so, and our deaf fellows were like, this is way too much, like streamline your your sounds and your music and just have him in one box. But you can see sort of what we tried to do with this video.
If you think about it, it doesn't make sense for a blind person to use a camera. But the iPhone has its features where it talks about the right edge, left edge. The voiceover actually says that.
One face near top edge. Centered.
And the good thing about it is that you also have the recording features and the things that are all there on the iPhone where you just swipe and double tap.
Camera mode, video, near top left edge.
So it's there, although you...
So you kind of get, I love Krishner. I said he's like an artist, and you could get so much into sign language interpretation and how you coordinate that and get it just right. And it's such an art, but I use him all the time. I just love him. I think he adds such a dimension to the film. Okay, so moving on to AI, which I know we're going to talk about, and we've been talking about, Jason and I among ourselves. So what's happening with AI? So this next clip I'm going to show you just blows my mind. So with AI now, they're able to analyze the footage and provide really pretty detailed audio descriptions. And so this is something called VidiScribe, which now the Disability Justice Project, we just have a subscription with them. And the first time I used it, I was like, I'm just going to throw in this video and see what happens, which I did with this video that you're going to see. And I am just, my mind is blown. My mind is blown. I'm not like an AI person. Maybe some of you are. I have a little description from VidiScribe after this. You are. VidiScribe, you said? Vidi, V-I-D-D-Y, S-C-R-I-B-E. They just won Best Google App. And their subscriptions are super reasonable for the cost saving, because to do audio description, right? I mean, you have to record yourself, you have to extend the B-roll, you basically have to re-edit the whole video, not with VidiScribe. So I'm going to play that. So this, after we went to the Pacific, our filmmakers were then trained, and they went out and started doing their own stories. So in this one, this is two blind filmmakers and one with low vision, and they are doing something on climate change in Samoa, interviewing a farmer. But I literally threw this into VidiScribe, and you'll see there's some little glitches, but this is what it spit out.
A spiral graph tracks global temperatures from 1880. The line's initially a cool blue. As the years progress, the lines transition to light orange, then to a concerning coral red by 2016. Text. The last decade on Earth has been the hottest on record. An animated map of Earth shows temperature anomalies from 1892 to 1890. The map transitions through the years, displaying increasing heat anomalies, with larger areas turning orange and red. Text. This has intensified heat waves in the Pacific, severely impacting people with disabilities by worsening health conditions and making it dangerous to be outdoors. Apia, Samoa. A man in a wheelchair, Ulai, wheels along a narrow path beside a cinder block wall. A woman sits in a chair nearby.
One major challenge is the
Ulai sits in a wheelchair under a green awning in a garden. He speaks.
Increasing heat from the sun. The intense heat
Ulai continues to wheel his chair along the narrow path.
can lead to other issues for me, such as bed sores.
Ulai rakes soil in his garden from his wheelchair, leaning over to reach the ground.
It has become difficult to work outside for long periods.
He uses a small hand tool to work the soil.
Okay. So just a couple of things about that. That's just throwing it in. If it is interrupting some of the dialogue, so with my subscription, I can change that. AI sometimes gets it terribly wrong using ableist language. I can change that. I can change the voice, right? It's the typical like American voice. And this is another one that just blew my mind. If they pick up another voice, so, you know, we do videos in Indonesia. If they pick up an Indonesian voice, they will do the audio descriptions in Indonesian. Like that, to me, they'll just automatically, now how accurate it is, I don't know. But so this is powered by Gemini. And I think they have like 100 languages, not Nepali, unfortunately, which is a country where we do a lot of work. But this is the explanation that they gave me. I don't know a lot about it, but I just sort of put it there. But they, you know, they're actually like analyzing colors. They're obviously can read the text. I don't know how they do the context aware, the concerning coral red. Like, where did they get that word concerning from? I just met with the two of them. They're really just starting out on this adventure, but I think it's pretty, I don't know. I think it's pretty mind-blowing what just putting it into VidiScribe and what it was able to do. We are extremely small staff. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to, you know, hire a voiceover people to like re-edit all of our videos. I think we're going to talk about that later, that there's some, you know, issues with using AI. But in terms of making video more accessible in so many ways, right, language-wise also, we really have the capacity to like reach people we never have been able to reach before. Yeah. So just couple of other things about AI. They now have sign language avatars. I don't know if anybody has seen that. I've played with them a little bit. But we're already using AI, right? YouTube captions are AI. You're now seeing in both Adobe Premiere and in CapCut, they'll generate like English captions, but if you want it for a Chinese audience or an Indonesian audience, they will automatically translate those into other languages. So I think we are moving quickly in terms of making our videos more accessible and harnessing AI to do that.
So I just have a few questions for you both, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. But on the topic of AI, I know blind and low vision professionals are writing, performing, and producing audio descriptions. So are there concerns that AI will take away jobs?
I'll take that. Absolutely. I am friendly with a consortium of blind and visually impaired and other kind of marginalized members, community members who have an audio description collective, largely based out of New York. And I know they are very vocal on social media about not using AI, that you are taking jobs away from blind and low vision people. I mean, not only are they doing the voicing, which, you know, is not a complicated thing to imagine someone who is blind doing, but they are even writing the audio description. Often they do have the assistance of someone who is better sighted, but I'm friendly with a woman who has done live describing because she knows the lingo. She knows how to take information, digest it, and then repeat it in a way that is concise and descriptive for people who can't see what's going on the screen. So they are very concerned that AI is going to take these jobs. And these are not well-paying jobs either. I mean, this particular collective, they charge about $600 for 20 minutes of video. You're dividing that $600 maybe 3 or 4 ways. This is not, you know, a real money-making endeavor. But considering that people who are blind and low vision often live below the poverty line, that they are largely unemployed, mostly because of barriers, either physical or social barriers that prevent them from having gainful income, this could be one avenue. But I think that, as Jody mentioned, there are mistakes that the AI could make. It could use language that is offensive. It could interrupt the dialogue, which is, you know, one of the core principles of making audio description, that it doesn't interrupt the dialogue. So I think there is room for blind and visually impaired people to continue working in quality control, that they can, you know, listen to it and make decisions, editorial decisions, like, is this description accurate? So that's one role they can still perform in. And just also the editing. Obviously, as Jody said, with this VidiScribe, you can move the description around on the timeline. So there are plenty of accessible ways for someone who is blind or low vision to use audio editing or video editing, even video editing software too, I suppose. So I think there are still roles. The writing, you know, I think like anything with AI, whether it's ChatGPT, it's great for that initial brainstorm. It's great to get ideas from. I mean, I'll be honest, like the title of my documentary, Invisible Impact, Disability on Climate Change's Frontline, was inspired by a little chat I had with ChatGPT. Like, ChatGPT did not give me that title, but I took some words when I, you know, gave it a prompt about, I'm making a film in South Asia about climate change and disability. And I think the same could be said about making audio description. Maybe the AI generators could give some good ideas, but you know, context has always been a problem. Whether using using AI to make alt text, or I guess in this case audio description, and again to have that human touch as like the final say, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My next question is, what are some tools or resources that journalists can use to help them with audio descriptions and descriptive captions?
Yeah. Again, I think this is emerging, but and maybe you heard about this. So Google just came out with something called expressive captions. Have people heard about this? So if you're watching a video on an Android device, it automatically will caption it. But not only will it caption the dialogue again, but if somebody is like really emphatic or excited, it will have their dialogue in all caps. It will also caption if somebody sighs or somebody laughs, and also ambient noise. So if there's clapping. So I think it's only a matter of time, and it may already be out there, where you know, even because we already know that YouTube, right, will caption our videos, and it's very easy to take that YouTube file, the VTT or the SRT file, and to use it elsewhere, right, so that you can just caption whatever you have, but not descriptive captions. And so this is something new that actually on our board of advisors, we have somebody who's with the Google accessibility team. And so we're sort of at the forefront of that. But I don't think it's long before that tool will be available, or a tool like it, so that everybody can do descriptive captions. So that's one thing. I think VidiScribe is one of many. The people who developed our site, they're working on something similar. So I think these tools are going to be even more accessible. The only other thing that I would say, and this relates more to filmmaking, but I think it's important to mention, is that CapCut and Adobe Premiere now have something called text-based editing. So that, and this is great for my deaf filmmakers, right? Before they had to sit with somebody who would tell them when to cut. Now with text-based editing, the text is in the left. They can literally highlight what they want, and they can put it on the timeline. So we're really about like the filmmaker doing as much independently as possible, and that's a very recent tool that we've started using as well.
Now I'll open it up to the audience for some
Maybe, yeah, maybe carry that around.
Yeah, yep. Caleb is our microphone person. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Leanna, and I work here in Boston at WCDB Channel 5, one of the fellows with Reinvent. And so I'm working a lot on the digital space, but I've been working in traditional broadcast for a long time. Obviously, broadcast does that which is required by law for closed captioning, and I'm really adamant on our social videos that we're adding captioning as well.
Good.
Do you have examples of legacy or traditional broadcast media that you think is doing a good job of taking it one step further beyond that which is required by law to make content more accessible on air, but then particularly online?
Again, unfortunately, action is only taken often when the strong arm of the law is implied, right? So the FCC has mandated that a certain number of broadcast markets include audio, in the case of audio description, include audio description in X number of hours a week of programming. That number has expanded recently. I do not know where that's going in the near future. But anyhow, the idea was that more and more markets, I guess eventually to all of the markets, would be required to have audio described content. That does exist. I mean, I live in the New York market, so of course that was one of the first to have audio description available. Not so much in news content, that hasn't happened yet, but for entertainment programming, you can access an auxiliary channel that will have the audio description if it was created. So people in New York, Los Angeles, you name it, whatever the top 10 markets are, would have access to this auxiliary channel. But unfortunately, news is still a blank spot here, and I think there are some inherent difficulties with describing a 3-minute news package, or and again, often it's live, so you would have to have someone kind of on set really describing what the meteorologist is talking about, and describing the map that they are pointing to. So, but still, I find even some of the big cable news networks do not have audio described content on their websites, and that is, I mean, there's no excuse, frankly. Like, that's easy for a documentary on CNN or you name it. Like, not to have audio description available, like you can toggle on that audio track in their media players. So no, there's still more to be shamed than to be applauded.
And just one other thing to say, and this isn't a plug for the Disability Justice Project, but if you go to our Instagram, so we also do video descriptions. So we describe the video, what the person looks like, and we have the dialogue in there because the alt text just doesn't cut it. So on Instagram, on LinkedIn, we used to do which is kind of what it is, but we also used to do descriptive transcripts so that, when you watched our videos, well, you could read the transcript. But now the thing to know about YouTube, in this country anyway, is it does have an interactive transcript, which is great for screen readers. So YouTube, it's really easy to adapt those to add the music and the sounds. And then it's a little button, I think on the right, it's an interactive transcript. So if you have a screen reader, you can sort of follow along with the interactive transcript. So there are some things, but the way that we get around it when it's not accessible on social media is we have video descriptions for all of our content. Yeah.
I'm just gonna ask a follow-up on that, because I work almost exclusively in social video, a lot of YouTube as well, but the tools on YouTube are slightly more robust.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how the nuts and bolts of how some of these tools work on Instagram and TikTok, and when there aren't tools available, what we can do as content creators to, maybe it is providing an audio described version, or is it a more descriptive script? What can we do with social video to make it more accessible when the tools aren't available?
Yeah, I mean, so all of our All of our we put in our captions before we put it on TikTok or Instagram, so we don't rely on those. And that helps us, I think, just have more control over it. And so in those cases, again, we would do the video descriptions. How much video description? Again, sometimes, like we're limited in terms of like our character limit. We will actually put a link to a descriptive transcript. We used to do that on Twitter when we were on X, which we're not really on very more, but it'll be a link to a descriptive transcript, which is another way to do it. And that was just a Google Doc. So those are kind of the ways that we've gotten around it. I mean, we have some North Star, like Levant Consulting. They're really big on social media, Instagram, and about changing the narrative on disability. And we kind of follow in terms of like how they are accessible. And they definitely have like pretty lengthy video descriptions and things like that. So that's kind of how and we could be better. I mean, we don't have audio described videos on there. And part of the feed that we get is that when people, when they watch them or hear them, they're like, what the heck is this? Like they're very confused. So then we have to have a description. This is an audio describe. So we're constantly like back and forth and adapting to what's happening in the tools available.
I think I spoke one time with a customer service rep at Disney Plus about whatever it was I was calling about, but we got into talking about audio description, and he said, yeah, he's like the only calls I get about audio description is by customers saying, how do I turn this thing off? Like why am I hearing this disembodied voice speaking to me?
Yeah.
But in terms of, YouTube's kind of interesting. So there is and I do not have a lot of familiarity with it. It came out a while ago. It's called You Describe. It was created by a guy named Joshua Mealy. He just wrote a book, actually. He is a MacArthur genius, and he created this program, You Describe, which is a crowdsourced way of embedding audio description onto videos, specifically on YouTube. YouTube was also supposed to roll out an audio channel selector that you could embed different languages, an audio description track. I have seen it on some YouTube channels for major broadcasters, including Voice of America, but it's not widely available yet. So it could become, I don't know where YouTube is with that, but there could be ways. Otherwise, the best way maybe the best, if not only way right now, short of paying the subscription for something like VidiScribe, is, you take your original audio track in whatever platform you edit in, and then record a descriptive narration and mix it together, and you export that onto a separate video file and link to that.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for some clarification and like best practices on captions. It seems to be standard practice now just to burn them in without, you can have the auto-generated ones, but I've been burning them in, and I'm wondering like just what is like the good standard caption? I mean, we've seen kind of a variety, but even in the presentation here, and those ones there are green, so.
Right, that's not mine.
For like, what is the best practice for just being the most accessible captions? Is it Arial font? Is it, what's that? I'm just looking for those kind of things.
Yikes.
Not my realm.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's not really, we have like a certain style that we use, and we just want it to be legible. So we do like the white text on the black background. We don't care like stylistically how it looks. We're not going for that. We're just going for legibility.
Contrast.
The contrast. Yep. We used to do yellow on black, but now we just do white on black. So there probably are, there's like stay away from certain fonts and et cetera. And, I have seen some captions like, just why are they even there? Because they're, right.
Change colors, like it's definitely like it's stimulating visuals, but it's I feel like
not accessible. Yeah.
I just showed my class a great documentary film called Def Jam, DEAF Jam, about slam poetry in like the deaf community in New York, and the director, who was a colleague of mine at Montclair, she used animated subtitles that explode, and as these performers are performing their poetry in ASL, the captions are moving and all, and I thought it was great, but it could be distracting. And I showed my class, and some of my students are people who identify as being on the autism spectrum, and one of the students was really kind of disturbed, not like erratically disturbed, but like did not like that the captions were moving all around. That was very distracting to him. So, one accessibility solve for one type of person could be could be distracting or confusing to someone else.
And I know Crip Camp, the way that they filmed it with captions in mind. So like when they interviewed people, so the captions weren't always in the same place, but they would leave a space for the captions. So they really and you see that a lot where people are planning ahead for like how they film something. Yeah.
This is a pretty personal issue to me as someone who was recently diagnosed with a medical condition and it's impacting my work. Do you think the journalism industry, both independent and broadcast, should do a better job of making it the workplace inclusive for their employees and their team?
Yes.
Sure. I mean, I haven't worked in a newsroom in more than 20 years, but certainly there are any number of physical and social barriers within a newsroom that could prevent someone from doing their job. And I think this is a benefit from the pandemic was that many disabled people became employed, more gainfully employed, because it became the norm to work from home. And for many people who have chronic pain or other mobility conditions, being able to work off their desktop or laptop, whatever, at home, enable them to earn like a living, and maybe even for the first time. So that is certainly something newsrooms can do better. And there are some organizations that are kind of in the works that are disabled journalist associations that some of my colleagues at the National Center on Disability and Journalism are working on. And a part of their mandate is to advocate for more accessible newsrooms and better policies toward journalists with the disability. So it's in the works.
Two things. I think there's a whole culture around journalism, right? Like you got to be tough, you got to suck it up, right? And so I think that's part of it, not really creating a space where we can talk openly about disability, about mental health, about the impact of doing the work we do. So I think it's a cultural shift, and I see that with accessibility too. Like when I talk to people about accessibility, it's almost like sometimes journalists see it as a conflict of interest, kind of. Like, no, that's a little too, like, I don't really know how to describe it, but, we're like, we can't be that accommodating or something, you know what I mean? There's sort of like, I feel like this firewall, and objectivity is in that, and like, you got to be tough kind of thing. And I'm surprised sometimes when I have conversations about like, there's no captions on your videos, how much pushback I get. And the old, well, we don't really have any disabled viewers, right? Or we don't really have any. So I think there's a lot in terms of the culture that needs to change. Yeah. Anything else?
When you're editing a film, do you find yourself ever, let's say you have an intro that has like a lot of shots really fast and the audio description couldn't keep up with it. Do you find yourself having to edit things after the fact to make them more accommodating, or are you thinking about all those things up front and factoring that into how you cut the rhythm of your films?
There are blind filmmakers who do advocate for thinking about the audio description in the production process before you hit post-production. And I could say when I made my film, which is only about 20 minutes long, I told my friend who was doing the post-production we need to hang on some shots, any images, any scenes with a lot of stuff going on or text, we need to hang on this a little longer than you might be comfortable doing, because I know I'm going to put in audio description. But I I don't think I'm generalizing here. Maybe I am. Most non-disabled filmmakers don't even consider audio description. Usually it's done by a a localizations service. It's done by the distributor. It's the audio description is the last thought that, you know, the director has in mind when they're making their documentary or feature film for that matter. It's something to be left, you know, to be done by someone, some nameless, faceless person well after the final cut is done. But yeah, at least within the disability media community, I think there is a push to consider audio description as part of the production process. Maybe even have an audio describer, you know, on staff. You don't typically see in the credits audio description by. You will hear it sometimes, but it's not a part of the original production. So there is, you know, again, within the disability community, there is a push to make the audio description team part of the initial production.
Mm. Great.
Well,
Good.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Michaela. Thank you.